Start. Well, good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome on this balmy Manchester night to the Greater Manchester Voluntary Community Faith Social Enterprise and Social Enterprise Sector Mayoral Hustings 2026. Tonight has been hosted by the Greater Manchester VCFSE Leadership Group, and it has been kindly organised by Voluntary Sector Northwest. A massive thank you to you for pulling all of this together in quite a short space of time. There was a little clap there as well. Should we do a clap? It is brilliant to see so many people from our sector represented in the room tonight and also joining us online on the live stream. We are a sector committed to making sure our region's people and places thrive. So I'm delighted that we've got Geraldine Coggins from the Green Party, Bev Craig from Labour and Cooperative Party, and Richard Kilpatrick from Liberal Democrats. And I'm sure we all join them in a warm welcome and look forward to hearing how they would intend as Mayor to work alongside our sector to continue to make sure our people and our places thrive. But first, a little bit of housekeeping. So toilets, as you exit the main hall, there are toilets, including a fully accessible toilet on your right-hand side. Fire safety, there are no fire alarms planned in terms of rehearsals, so if you hear one, head to the nearest fire exit sign. This fire exit on my right-hand side is fully wheelchair accessible. If you need a minute, there is a quiet room for people to use for a sensory break, prayer or privacy. As you exit the main hall, you will see that room. It is named the Friends Room just on your right-hand side. Please note there is a professional photographer. Give us a wave, Anastasia. A reluctant wave. You obviously like to be behind the camera. If other people do not want to be on camera, you should have a bright pink sticker on your lanyard that Anastasia will be looking out for. If you don't have one, but you would like one and you'd like to be opting out of photographs, which will be used for future communications and promotional purposes, then please make yourselves known to any Voluntary Sector Northwest staff. I'm going to get you to wave. There we go. So they're dotted around the room. Thank you very much. On the topic of comms, of course, we encourage you to join the conversation online. We are having the conversation on social media using the event hashtag. Brace yourself, we like an acronym, don't we, in this sector? Hashtag GMVCFSE Hustings 2026. And tag the Greater Manchester VCFSE Leadership Group using the accounts on LinkedIn, X, and Blue Sky. On each row, you will see a couple of copies of this. If you scan those QR codes, it will take you straight to those accounts that you can join that conversation on social media. Right, before we get into the official hustings part of the night, I would love to extend a warm welcome to my colleague Mike Wild, who is going to give an overview of our sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. Hello, everybody. It's great to see so many friends and colleagues from the VCSE sector in the room today. I thought, by way of giving a bit of context, by the way, I should introduce myself. I'm Mike Wild. I'm the Chief Executive of Manchester Community Central, which is the charity that supports all the other charities in the city of Manchester, and we work together with our colleagues across Greater Manchester through a partnership called 10GM and through the GMVCFSE Leadership Group. Now, about 12 years ago, I think it was, a bunch of us from VCSE organisations met up in the Northern Quarter and thought, hang on a minute, there's a mayor for Greater Manchester going to be created. We need to find a way to have a relationship with them because we haven't really got a system for doing that yet. So we got our heads together and set up what is now known as the GMVCFSE Mayor Leadership Group. The reason we picked the term VCFSE is because we spent about 6 weeks, it felt like, trying to work out what to call ourselves. So apologies to anybody who is wondering what on earth is the VCFSE sector. It's charities, community groups, voluntary organisations, the community work done by faith groups, the cooperatives and mutuals and community benefit societies and social enterprises and purpose-led businesses, and all of that stuff. We could call ourselves civil society, third sector, there's tons of it. We had to pick a name, and we thought that was the one we should go with. Not for use really in public, but just as a shorthand to be able to talk to a mayor who was going to come in, and we didn't know at that point who it was going to be and how it was all going to work. And the reason we had to do that is that there are 17,000 organisations in that sector across Greater Manchester. That's an amazing wealth of talent and creativity and diversity, because all our organisations are basically local people getting together to do stuff, to make stuff happen, to make their corner of the world a bit better. And that's across all communities of place, identity, interest. And if you think about the power of that across Greater Manchester, 17,000 organisations, they employ, for example, 75,000 people. So there's 75,000 jobs created in that sector. 500,000 people volunteer in that sector every year. It is a huge contribution, not just to the economy, but to the communities across Greater Manchester. And one of the things that we wanted to do as a VCSE leadership group was make that the centre of the conversation in Greater Manchester, and not to have to fight for a place around the table anymore. 12 years on, we've done that. You can see we've got the Greater Manchester VCFSE Accord, which has just been renewed. That writes into all the thinking across Greater Manchester that we are part of that conversation. We don't have to ask permission to be there. We have a unique contribution to make as a sector. And so over those 12 years of developing that leadership group, that's what we've achieved. We've made it about getting around the table and getting the agendas that we bring from communities into the conversations. And so tonight, it's really important for us to think about the conversations we want to have with the next mayor of Greater Manchester. Because if you think about it, you know, what we've achieved is that the VCSE sector, the VCFSE sector, its existence is no longer up for debate. We've moved past that. What we're talking about now is what do we do together? And the Accord ties all that in. It recognises the value of working with the sector. It's great that the leadership group is now in a position where we can organise events like this, and that we can show the rest of the country, because we are way ahead compared to many other parts of the UK with organising ourselves as a VCFSE sector. And we do need to think about picking an easier to say acronym, don't we? The number of times I'm in meetings where I hear VCSFSE going round and round in circles, but you know, we won't penalise anybody if they get the acronym wrong tonight. That's not what this is about. This is a great opportunity for us to have a really good debate about how we see our role as a sector in the future of Greater Manchester. And I think we should also just take a moment to thank all the candidates for putting themselves up for public office, because we know increasingly that's a really, really challenging and brave thing to do. So thank you. I'll leave them to do all the talking now. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you, Mike. Right, on to the main event. To explain the agenda, we're going to have 10 minutes of opening statements from our candidates. They're going to get a luxurious 3 minutes each. They're happy with that? Generous. We've got the timer already set here, so there's no going over. And then we're going to have 45 minutes for Q&A. We will then end with 10 minutes of closing remarks. But just a little note about the candidates that you see before you tonight. Candidates were invited from parties that achieved a vote share of more than 4% in the 2024 Greater Manchester Mayoral election, reflecting the need to balance the need of participants with sufficient time to get decent questions and decent answers in the time that we've got. We invited candidates from Labour, Green, Conservative, Lib Dem and Reform. Unfortunately, Phil Eckersley from the Conservative Party, who had initially confirmed attendance, had to withdraw earlier this week. We did not receive confirmation from the Reform candidate. We are pleased to welcome the three of you tonight. Ground rules are please no interrupting or over-speaking, which shouldn't be a problem because you've got one mic between you, so we're taking turns. Please remain respectful, and that's for everybody in the room. For the Q&A, I will go into more detail during that part of the evening, but we will only be using pre-selected questions for that, and the questions will be timed. Now I'd like to invite the candidates to give their 3-minute opening statement answering the question, how will you, as the next Greater Manchester Metro Mayor, work with the voluntary community, faith and social enterprise sector? And I'm going to invite you to come up in first name alphabetical order. So that would mean Bev Craig from Labour Party. There's your mic. You can take that wherever you like within the room.
Can't leave though. So thank you very much, and first of all, thank you all for coming along on this hot Manchester night to be able to talk about how we can build a Greater Manchester together. I want to talk to you a little bit around my promise and my plan, around what we're going to do to make Greater Manchester the city region that it deserves to be. But firstly, for those of you that haven't worked with me, I want to give you a quick flavour of why I got into politics. My background is what shapes me, but it also shapes how I take on the injustices that I see in the world. Growing up on a tougher council estate, there's naturally the life lessons that you got along the way. Be that around the challenges that you saw with poor quality housing, addiction, mental health challenges, or worklessness. But the thing that it taught me most was the absence of community power and the need for dignity and pride. Because I'm from a proud community, and we didn't call ourselves poor, but services treated us that way. And so I got into politics because I didn't see people that looked or sounded like me with my life experiences, and I wanted to make a difference. I did that as a councillor, and then when I became council leader in December 2021, I set about trying to put people at the heart of what we do in this city. And I think radical times need radical action, and I'll get on to that in a minute. But I think how I've begun to work with the sector here shows what I would do across Greater Manchester. I turned on the head our plans around council housing, and we've got so much more to do, but last year built more council homes in this city than we've done in 25 years. I sat down with the sector over poverty, worklessness and homelessness, and that's why some of the numbers in temporary accommodation has gone down against a trend of going up. And I did the same around tackling inequalities, around making Manchester fairer. And hopefully those of you that have seen me in Manchester know what it would mean across Greater Manchester with my values. But I want to talk to you quickly about my plan, because we need radical but ambitious action that is also realistic, that puts more money in people's pockets, be it free bus passes for 11 to 18-year-olds, that gives 500 quid to families, be it the work we do to restore pride in our town centres, to put money in our high streets, to help young people into opportunities, or be it what we do about waking up every single day to eradicate inequalities in this city. I've set an ambitious target of building 50,000 council and genuinely affordable homes, because that's what the statistics say we need as a start. And I want to just give you this commitment. I've fought my whole life to try and make society better. The kind of mayor I'll be will to be work with you, not do to you, and I would be proud to have you at my side to build the Greater Manchester we all deserve.
Thank you. I would now like to invite Geraldine Coggins from the Green Party up to the lectern.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone for organising tonight. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces here. And before I say anything about politics, I want to say something about all of you. When a family loses their home, it's rarely the leader of the councillor who picks up the phone. When someone is lonely, grieving, fleeing abuse, struggling with debt, worrying about a child or an elderly parent, it's not usually a politician that they talk to. It's someone in this room. It's all of you. A volunteer, a food bank organiser, a faith leader, a youth worker, a community group that won't let people fall through the gaps, someone that helps unconditionally. And unconditional support, a city region for whom no one is left behind, regardless of background. That, in many ways, sums up why I am standing to be your mayor. You know, I'm originally from Ireland, and like many people who've made their homes here, I know what it's like coming here with hoping to find belonging, and I've spent many years building that sense of community. And I know that the community we have here is only possible because ordinary people, they genuinely care for each other. And that is the foundation on which so much is built. And politics needs to learn from this. Politics needs to learn from you. You know, for too long, we have measured success on how many cranes are on our skyline and on investment announcements. While normal people can't afford to pay their rent, they can't find a reliable bus, and they can't find a warm, safe home to raise their children in. Well, to me, growth is meaningless if people aren't feeling it in their own lives. And our green vision is simple. We believe the power belongs in communities, not in institutions. We believe the housing should be about homes, not about investment portfolios. The transport should connect people. The prevention should always come before crisis. And as Greens, we believe that tackling the climate emergency must be at the heart of everything that we do. So I want to share with you tonight my plan for genuinely affordable homes, for better public transport, for thriving high streets and warmer homes, and giving communities a real voice through citizens' assemblies. And I'm here to ask you to work in partnership with me to make this happen. But I'm not just here to tell you about my priorities. I'm here to listen to what your priorities are here. And I want to ask you how I can help to deliver your priorities. You are not an add-on to the public services. You are not here to fill the gaps when budgets are cut. You are equal partners and you are the experts. So my only vested interests are our people and our planet. And I really believe that together we are going to make real change.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Richard Kilpatrick from Liberal Democrats. Where are you going? Standing?
I'll stay here. I'll stay
Okay.
here just for everyone's sanity.
Over
Hello,
to you.
everyone. And I just want to share the sentiments from the other two candidates, actually, and just thanking you for everything that you do in our communities. When I was first elected in this city to represent the people of Didsbury, I was elected because actually I was a community politician. I really cared about the place that I decided to live in, decided to fall in love in. And actually, in doing so, what I saw firsthand was just how embedded the community and voluntary sector and faith groups are in everything that a council or residents interact with every single day. So I want to thank you for everything that you do, but I also want to say that I'm one of you. I'm active in my community. I'm a community organiser and a community volunteer first and foremost, and I happen, because of that work, to also be elected and have the honour to elect for the people and the neighbours that I have down in Didsbury. Now, I also get, actually, in all of the work that I do, that the system's broken, actually, that the residents that live across this city region, unfortunately, don't have that trust and that faith in the institutions that should be serving them to do what they need it to do. You know, look at how our faith groups, unfortunately, have experiences with GMP. Look at trying to access those emergency services across councils, across Greater Manchester, and the actual, how hard it is to advocate for those residents in order to get what is just basic human dignity and human rights from the services that should be working for them. And I can see then why trust in politicians is at an all-time low. And I think we need to do better, right? We need to make sure that organisations like yours are right at the heart of decision-making across Greater Manchester. And that's fundamental because the mechanism isn't working. And I know that by doing that core learning, by creating policy together, we can actually start to rebuild trust in our politics. And on the doorstep, people are telling me a really simple message. It's that this election's actually about making Greater Manchester affordable again. It's about doing that in three ways. It's tackling the growing cost of childcare that is putting the ambition to start a family here in this city region way out of reach for so many. It is the cost of housing, not just in Manchester city centre, but actually across the boroughs. And we need to be bold. Our politics needs to be bolder to deliver for the next generation of people who are desperate to live and work here in Greater Manchester. And we can do that in lots of ways, and I hope to discuss them tonight. And finally, our social care sector is broken. I've lived through it. My mum unfortunately passed away with Alzheimer's. And I saw my family, on breaking point, quite frankly. And I know that we need to do more to understand accessibility, affordability, and quality of our social care across Greater Manchester. That's what I'm offering in this election. That's what voice I'm offering, and I'd be honoured to get your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and to all of our candidates for being perfectly to time. Let's keep it up as we move on to the question section of tonight's hustings. Firstly, we'd like to thank everybody who submitted a question. Incredibly, we received close to 100 questions, which just shows how passionate, committed, and vocal our sector can be, and reflecting the interest that you have in the election and the issues that affect both our sector and the people that we work with and for. Questions have been pre-selected based on themes that came up the most, and we've tried to reflect the range as best as possible with the questions chosen. We will, however, be sharing all of the submitted questions with the candidates after the event so that every issue raised can be seen and considered. Some of tonight's questions will be asked directly by attendees. I think the majority are. A member of the team, give us a wave, Cassandra. She will be bringing the microphone over to those that already know that they are asking questions in the audience. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer questions. Jump in, whoever wants to go first. We won't go in alphabetical order for these.
Try and take it in turns.
Yeah, we need that turn taken, demonstrated. Thank you. Okay, we ready? So, first question is from Sarah from Action Together. Thank you, Sarah. Please tell us your full name, title, and organisation, followed by your question.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Sarah Lambert, so I'm from 10GM and Action Together. I'm GM, Head of Programme for Live Well Spaces of Hope and Connection, which is a £16.5 million programme for 4 years that's been backed by the National Lottery to invest in reinforcing social infrastructure and growing community power, wealth and action in Greater Manchester. And my question for the candidates is, if elected, will you commit to build on the flagship Live Well programme? And if so, how will you prioritise growing community power to support it? Thank you.
Are we okay with that question? Any clarifications? Or can everybody hear that roving mic okay? There was a shake of the head. Yeah, we need to be about this close, guys, to the mic. Could we just get it again? 'Cause I haven't... Yeah, is that all right? Sarah, would you mind repeating that and give us your loudest voice, please?
Sorry. So my question to the candidates is, if elected, will you commit to and build on the Live Well flagship programme in Greater Manchester, and how will you prioritise growing community power to enable it? Sorry in advance for my voice.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you so much for everything you are doing. As I said in my introduction, in the Green Party, we really believe in giving power to people and grassroots democracy. That's the way we work inside the Green Party, and that is the way we want to support and empower our communities to work for everyone. I've got plans to include a £10 million community development fund. We have so many needs in our society, and too often it feels like a lot of the money has been siphoned off by big business and isn't getting through to the people who really need it. And as I travel around the area, I know that people feel that a lot of the investment has gone into the city centre, and that when you go to places like Wigan and Rochdale and Tameside, they are feeling desperately left behind, and that, you know, the increases in growth and wealth that we have seen in the city centre have not filtered down to them. So I'm really passionate about getting our high streets thriving again and giving power to our people to make that happen. So I'm going to introduce an empty shops team that's going to have the tools and the expertise as well as £10 million behind it to help local communities take that power back, get those empty shop units opened again, get our high streets buzzing again, and help community groups like yours to set up whatever it is that you feel your community needs right there and then. And in terms of power to the communities, I mentioned in the introduction, I really believe in citizen assemblies. You know, the mayor has way too much power invested in one person. What we need is to be giving that power back to people. So I have in my manifesto a plan for a citizens assembly around road safety. We know that 1,000 people are killed and seriously injured on our roads in Greater Manchester in a year, which is absolutely horrifying. And we know that in order to change this, we need everyone's buy-in. We need to work together. And that's the sort of problem where a citizens assembly really works, because it's about finding people from all the different demographics and walks of life, helping them to get together, listen to experts, and make decisions that can make all of our lives better.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I think a really, really good question, because Live Well, I think, is one of the big pictures that Greater Manchester is making to redefine what social policy in this country looks like, and I want to build on it quickly. I think we shouldn't have to just rely on the National Lottery funding, and I think it's been great to see that roll out. But I want to roll out the ambition of having Live Well centres in every community. And I want to be able to understand how we can do that in a way that creates both the universal services and the targeted kinds of support that certain communities that face additional disadvantage need. I think for me, the reason that Live Well is so powerful is because it recognises that how the public services fundamentally treat people and make them feels often a little bit broken. You know, I've been to Live Well conferences where I've talked about my own family experience, where between my family of 5 people, they've got 50 different professionals that oversee their life, and none of them give them the advice that they trust to build a better life. So I'm a strong advocate of Live Well because I'm a believer in dignity and community power. My ask will be from Andy on day one, and I'm seeing him tomorrow, and I'll make it clear and write to him if I'm elected as Greater Manchester Mayor, that I finally want that devolution of that out-of-work support. For too long, DWP have disrespected our communities and not supported them, and now is the time to get that power, that control and that resource into the fantastic community groups. People like Loaves and Fishes that I saw in Salford this week, you know, the work that we've seen from many of our groups here, we can rewrite how our services work for people, but we can also place power in their hands. On the broader point around community power, there's a lot I'll do, and I'm sure we'll get into it, around how I think we can build on the Accord to embed it into every single area. Because I don't want to just treat you as a sector. I want to treat you as experts in every single field that I work. And even down to the Community Ownership Fund, where we're giving wealth to communities to own things, we can make a real difference.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, and thank you so much for that question. In short, yes. I mean, the Live Well flagship is fantastic, but to repeat what has already been said, 4-year funding from National Lottery, it does fill me with a little bit of concern, actually, because I'm reminded of some of those services that Macmillan Care used to provide in Greater Manchester, and some of the funding that was often lately announced, and actually an organisation had to inform many of the people that were desperate for that care and that service that they may no longer be able to get that service within 6 months. And I know the impact that had in my community, and I think we need to look more long term at the service that Live Well is providing and consider it an absolute requirement rather than what budget we face in a 4-year term. On community power, I was a really unusual 16-year-old in that my first engagement in politics was actually under something called community councils, which was this wonderful decision-making process. It didn't matter if you were under 18. Actually, you could come along and you could have a view and you could work out how we could deliver that in your community. And I found it as a real way to get engaged in my community at that time. And I think we need to look at how we can rework something, you know, give it that Manchester brand and make sure it can work, to make sure that everyone feels heard in their community. But access to community funds is a really interesting one. We absolutely need to make sure that the community funds that are given to local politicians and our national politicians are actually made, those decisions are made locally. And there's something we can do to feed those, right? We can also make social value an absolute requirement across Greater Manchester. Manchester City Council do a very good job of it. One of the things I would do is make sure that we use that power of convening to make sure that social value is maximised in every single borough of Greater Manchester, so the community groups are getting their fair share from the people that make a lot of money from this city region.
Thank you all. Moving on to question number 2, I'd like to invite Chioma to take to the mic, nice and loudly. Could we please have your name, job title, organisation, before you share your question, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Chioma Mbokwere from Iowa Ladies in Diaspora Aid. I am the project lead director for that organization. My question is, Greater Manchester is diverse, but many communities still feel unheard. So what will you do to bring communities together and prevent division, racism, and misinformation? Thank you.
Did we hear that question? Any clarifications needed?
No, I'm good. Thank you so much for that. Diversity is this city's superpower. If we could bottle up the diversity in this city region and give it to every corner of the United Kingdom, then maybe we might actually be a little bit nicer to each other, and maybe that politics that I described as broken might be a little less broken. So thank you for everything you do, first and foremost. In terms of how we bring groups together, I really pride myself in being a representative of a ward in Greater Manchester that has a mosque, a synagogue, and 3 churches. I've led from the front to make sure that those international issues that do have an absolute impact on the families across our city region, it has an impact on the point of not wanting to leave their home because they feel unsafe. That they see the anti-Semitism, they see the Islamophobia, they see those hate crimes, and they see them go unrecorded by GMP. And actually one of the first things I would do is make sure that we hold GMP to account for how it records hate crime. It's an absolute requirement. The data is how we change policy, right? So that's one of the first things I'd do. In terms of tackling misinformation, really, really important. Now, more resource at GMP goes into tackling the far right than other extremist groups. Did you know that? What I would do is make sure that we safeguard that funding, we increase that funding, and it includes fighting misinformation in our communities. But it means that GMP need to be trusted to get the intelligence for those communities, and it means investment in our neighbourhood policing, because that's how we build the relationship between community groups, faith groups, and diverse groups across Greater Manchester, so that they feel comfortable that the police are the people to go to.
Thank you.
So I hope that you're going to get very similar answers from all 3 of us, actually, because I'm proud to live in a city region that speaks over 200 languages, that people for generations have built the beautiful city that we see in front of us, and people of generations have fought to make it even better. And I think sometimes it's about us being unashamed and uncompromising. And I've upset the Telegraph a number of times, which I'll take as a badge of honour. And I think we've seen some of those stories where they've dared to attack me simply for saying simple, progressive things that should be part of the city region. I think there has to be a zero tolerance of racism and of division across all of our public sector institutions. I think we can do more in that, and we can do better on that. I agree around our policing, and I've heard from too many faith leaders that actually the confidence in reporting and how racism is policed does need to be looked at, and I would commission a review of that. There's been challenges, for example, with the Places of Worship Fund and getting it out to communities quickly. I've already started to take that up, and I think we can have some of that control devolved to us across Greater Manchester. And I think neighbourhood policing that looks, feels like and sounds like our communities is really important. So whilst committing to extra neighbourhood police on the street, they have to look and represent the communities that they are policing. I think on misinformation, really quickly, I think we can have a unit centrally that deals with some of this, but uses our community groups like we've been using in Manchester, because you are trusted in your communities in a way that public institutions are not, and using our networks to tackle misinformation. And finally, I say this as someone who grew up in Northern Ireland, you bring people together not by lecturing them and making it sound like you're coming to a really boring event, but you bring people together over things that they've got in shared interests and the kinds of fun we can have. We've started doing that in our communities in Manchester, and I would like to roll that out even further.
Thank you, Chioma, and thank you again for everything you do. I think I agree with most of what we have heard so far. Like the others, I knock on doors all the time. I have spoken to so many people in our Muslim community, in our Jewish community, in our trans and queer communities who do not feel safe on our streets, who do not feel safe sometimes going to the police. There are too many people in those categories, and I think the first job of the Mayor is leadership, and to be absolutely clear that we stand fully against hate crime and discrimination in all forms. You know, that we in the Green Party are here to absolutely celebrate our diversity. The enormous diversity we have and have had for so many generations in this city region is an absolute gift, and I think we need to all make the most of it. We in the Green Party, we want to be the antidote to reform. The hate and division we have seen bred by them is shocking, and I want to move the Overton window back to where we're not having those discussions, where we're talking about the real problems that we face, the scarcity of housing, the scarcity of jobs, the poverty and the broken services. They're not about the small number of people who need support. They are about the establishment parties who have underfunded our public services for decades. I want to invest in reduction of violence and prevention. We mentioned earlier that preventing problems is the key rather than dealing with the crises. So I want to double the amount of money that the police spend in the violence reduction unit. We know that if we give the right support to young people at a time of crisis, to their families, their schools, their social workers, we know we can help them to go on and live really good lives and also help reduce crime rates for many years to come. So it's really important that we focus on prevention. I want, again, I'll agree with the others about our police need to more closely resemble the communities they serve, and we need to really invest in retention and recruitment to make that work. We need zero tolerance for violence and any sort of problems in the police, and we need to end suspicionless stop and search as well, and other practices like Prevent, which are targeting minoritized groups and are not helping and are part of the problem.
Thank you. On to question number 3. I would like to invite Cameron. Cassandra, where are you with your roving mic? Cameron's here, standing and ready to go. Cameron, let's have your full name, job title, organisation.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Cameron Boyle, co-chair of trustees at Manchester City of Sanctuary. A number of the Greater Manchester boroughs are now local authorities of Sanctuary and have therefore demonstrated a commitment to supporting refugees and people seeking sanctuary. As Mayor, will you work with organisations like Manchester City of Sanctuary to build this movement further and make Greater Manchester a city region of sanctuary? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cameron, for everything you're doing. I have committed in my manifesto to make Greater Manchester a city region of sanctuary. I think it is the least we can do. It shouldn't be up to organisations like you to plug the gaps in our broken immigration system. I have a hotel in my ward. I'm a councillor in Trafford Council, been the group leader there of the Greens for many years. And the young people that I work with there in the hotel who are seeking asylum here are wonderful individuals who are making such a difference and would love to make more of a difference. One of the roles of the Greater Manchester Mayor is not just about changing things that are directly in our control here in Greater Manchester, but being a really strong voice to the government in Westminster. And if we have our first Green Mayor in Greater Manchester, our Labour government will absolutely have to listen to what they are saying. So I will be very strongly calling on government, as I have always done, to roll back Shabana Mahmood's absolutely cruel and inhumane policies. And I was so disappointed to see our new Prime Minister vote for those the other night. We need to be making sure that people feel welcome here, that they are living in decent accommodation while they're waiting for their claims to be processed. We need claims to be processed quickly. We need people to be able to work while they're waiting as well. That will give them the chance to do something with their time, to learn English and to contribute. People want to contribute. come here to be part of our community, and I want them to know that they're absolutely welcome and we are here to celebrate their diversity. We need to help people with no recourse to public funds. We need to make sure that, for example, they're able to get the support they need. The people who say violence against women and girls know that there's a firewall between that reporting and immigration services, so they can safely come and get support from our police and so on. So again, I'll go back to my message that we in the Green Party are here to be the antidote to reform. And as your first Green Mayor, I am here to celebrate all the diversity of our and make sure that everybody knows that they are welcome here and they belong.
Thank you, Geraldine.
So I want to begin by saying how proud I was when Manchester City Council became a city of sanctuary, and something that myself and my former deputy leader, Joanna Midgley, cared deeply about to be able to bring through. And I think we wanted to commit to that, you know, and I say this as someone, the first political campaign that I got involved in when I was at university was around fighting to keep a lesbian asylum seeker called Aderonke in the country. Now, Aderonke has gone on to do fantastic things for our city and is a perfect example of what happens when you lean in and give people the opportunities. I think there are practical things that we do need to do, though, because we see the hardship that too many suffer. We've seen a lot of that at the coalface in Manchester, you know, and praising, I don't want to embarrass Joe and the work that Mustard Tree have done, but what they've been able to do and help us support, get people off the streets, has also been incredible. But we need some structural change around the things that are in place at the minute. There isn't enough ESOL, there isn't enough trauma support. I will call in the government and the Serco contract and actually create a proper support service that doesn't just drop people into a community without letting them know where they're going to be or where their GP service is, and actually works with the community to create it. I also agree that we need some changes around how no recourse to public funding works and the implications that that has for those in genuine need of support. I don't want to get myself in trouble on the live stream. In Manchester, we find ways to get around that and ways to support people as they've needed it. I would also say that I'm supportive and have previously made representations to the government around allowing Greater Manchester to be a trial of allowing people to work while they wait, because it gives people a commitment of something that they could do. And then the final thing I'd say is what happens when you get status and you get leave to remain, frankly, in this country is inhumane, and we need to redesign the support for people that get their leave to remain to help them stay, build their lives and help them be successful.
Thank you, Cameron. The first letter that I ever wrote to an MP or MEP or councillor or anything was about an issue in the centre of Middlesbrough where asylum seekers were placed in, quite frankly, inhumane conditions. And a landlord in the centre of that town made an incredible amount of money on the back of that. And that's what made me passionate about issues and my community, and why I wrote to a Liberal Democrat MEP who told me, knock on their door and talk to them and listen to them. And I think that's something that I still carry with me now. It's what's informed my politics, and actually that interaction really showed me that listening to refugees and asylum seekers empowers your politics and your ability to change things. So thank you again for everything you do. And I don't want to repeat everything that has been said, but actually, you know, yes is the answer to the city region sanctuary. I think it's an absolute given. It's something that should have been done well before now, quite frankly. Access to services, and I want to focus on access to services that Bev has already mentioned, but access to services for asylum seekers is almost impossible. I left that town hall and I met with a person who was just looking for customer services because they'd just been given their right to asylum in this country. And I noticed that they came from the hotel that was in my ward. So I was like, I have a duty to help this person. I had to stay for 4 hours to access that person's services, often fighting against all the possible barriers that a local authority puts in place to do it. And they were over the moon to be given a 6-week time frame to emergency accommodation. And I think that's a failing. So yes, absolutely, there's more that we can do. I totally agree with the campaign. But also, we absolutely need to give asylum seekers the right to work. I don't understand how this is a debate in modern society. It's a campaign that I hope every candidate around this table would support. And it's the national change that would make such an enormous difference to people in the asylum seeker in my community, and I know a lot of communities across Greater Manchester.
Thank you, all candidates. Right, let's move on to question 4. I'd like to welcome Rachel to ask your question. Please share your full name, title, organisation, and give us that question loud and clear.
Thank you. It's Rachel Summerscales. I'm CEO of Greater Manchester Community-Led Homes, and we represent a network of amazing people who are very passionate about designing, creating, building, refurbing buildings that they want to live in, work in, and support the community from. So my question is, can the candidates outline how they will support the growth of community ownership of assets such as housing and community centres across the city region? Thanks.
I'll take the microphone because it's in front of me. But so I think a really good question, and one that we've spoken recently about, because I think it's been quite slow, if I'm honest, getting community-led housing off the ground. And I think really important that as Mayor, I would back that. I know that we've got some good examples of where that's beginning to work, but I would want a dedicated strand of the funding that we give to homes to go on community-led housing. It takes a longer period of time to do things properly, and we have to start to build into the system how we'd actually co-produce that fund. So that's my commitment with that. But I also think there's something for me, and we'll no doubt get into housing a bit more, around how we use our land better. In Manchester, we've tried using council land, and it's one of the reasons that we've been able to build more council homes and social housing. But I want to use public sector land across Greater Manchester, opening up also to community-led housing. I've talked in my manifesto around a community ownership fund, and this is about being able to put wealth into the hands of our communities to keep it there. This is beyond just the kind of community right to buy and the community assets work that already exists. This is about being able to take a stake in something that matters, in a building that matters. It also means that in addition to forcing the landlords that sit on properties that are derelict through compulsory purchase orders, I want a new power from government around a forced sale order. And that means that if you're a landlord that simply just accrues value on a property that blights a community, you would force the sale of that so that something else could happen. And the Community Ownership Fund could help step into that gap. So I'm a Labour and cooperative candidate because I want to look at cooperative models of doing things. That's just a small snapshot, but I think it's housing, it's ownership, it's cooperatives, it's community-led wealth, and actually shifting the balance of power.
Thank you, Rachel. I have plans to start Homes for Greater Manchester. We know that the housing crisis is one of the biggest issues that we are facing. Too many people can't afford their rent, can't find a decent place to live. Young people can't manage to move out of home. So I have plans to create 20,000 new, genuinely affordable homes. We want to build 10,000 and we want to buy, fix up and retrofit another 10,000. And in all of these, Rachel, we will be prioritising options for communities, to take them over for cooperatives, for local authorities or housing associations. We will be looking at all those options and trying to work with all the groups that are out there. But the big thing we have to think about with housing is two things. It's about the money going in and the money going out. And for too long, what we have seen with Labour's plans is they have loaned out this huge amount of our taxpayer money to private developers who have provided us with more or less no affordable or social housing. And we all know that the small amount of affordable housing they have given us is very far from actually affordable. So that's why I always say genuinely affordable. We are talking about homes that can be paid for if you are on housing benefit. And we've got a fully costed plan to do this. We need to make this this city region a leader in retrofitting our homes, giving our young people new, secure, green jobs for generations to come, and a pipeline of those homes and those jobs coming down the road. So we have a 10-year plan. We're ready to hit the ground running in 2 weeks' time, but we've got that plan and vision for 10 years ahead, because this is the thing that makes a difference in people's lives. The huge skyscrapers and shiny executive apartments that we have seen, all they've done is take our rents up. They are actually part of the problem. Rents in Manchester City Council is on average 44% of your wages, and Salford has seen the biggest decrease in affordability of anywhere in the country in the last 10 years. So I really want to make a hard change from what we have seen by the previous mayor and by the Labour administration, and to turn this around and to make our housing homes for real people, not investment opportunities for developers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I've only got 2 minutes and I've got a lot to say, so I'll be nice and quick. Greater Manchester is the home of the cooperative movement. We haven't had a new cooperative for 40 years. I think housing and how we deliver housing needs to be done by cooperative, so I would create the first cooperative in Greater Manchester in 40 years. I think it changes the model totally. We can use the finance facility that GM has to deliver it. And we can do lots of, we have places to learn from, right? There is Copenhagen, there is Germany, there is Sweden. We already have a model that can work. We just need to make sure that Manchester is yet again setting the example for the rest of the country. We have mayoral development corporations. I think they're a good success, but we need to make sure that they work for community-led homes as well. Community assets can be absolutely baked into that, so that we have the infrastructure and the community assets across Greater Manchester in every single one of those mayoral corporation development areas to deliver it. Retrofitting is already happening. Salford has taken on 10,000 property, or 1,000 properties with the ambition to go further. They're very expensive, but one thing I would really like is actually those retrofitted houses should go into community hands. So once GM has provided that funding, then it should go back into the community hands to operate that asset, and not into arm's length corporations or anything like that. Now, when it comes to affordability, you'll hear lots of targets that need to be hit when it comes to affordable housing. Greater Manchester needs 150,000 affordable, which really we mean social housing, because that is actually the most affordable housing in the city region, built yesterday. That's the level that we're up against here. So we need to be bolder in how we do that. And yes, that means asking a lot more from national government, but it also means switching up how we deliver those models. One that is really interesting that I think we can learn from is a model where you go into a social rented tenancy for 5 years, and at the end of those 5 years you get half of the rent that you contributed back towards entering the private sector housing. I think it's a really interesting thing, but we need to be bolder. One of the things that we could do as a Citizens' Assembly actually is focus it on housing and how
Richard, I'm going to have to stop you there. Thank you. Now, question number 5 is a two-parter. It will come as no surprise to anyone in the room that there are plenty of questions on the subject of funding. So this is a two-parter, but I'm afraid you're still only going to have your 2 minutes, so a reminder, please do stick to time. The first question I'm asking on behalf of the Eastern Sudan Community Association. Grassroots groups like the Eastern Sudan Community Association are first responders for marginalised communities facing integration barriers, yet we struggle to secure core cost funding. As Mayor, how will you ensure that the Accord empowers minority-led community anchors like ours to survive and scale? Have we got that? That's your first part. We're on about core costs. And then the second part is going to be contributed by Jane. Are you in the room, Jane? Hi, Jane. I don't need to remind you to speak loud and clear. I know that you will.
Thanks, Grace. Hi, everyone. Hello. My name is Jane Dennison. I'm the founder and chief executive of a Manchester-based charity called the Mile Shy Club. Bev, Andy's a big fan. So my question is, Greater Manchester talks a lot about prevention, but funding often remains focused on crisis. What specific changes would you make to ensure community organisations like ours receive long-term investment rather than short-term grants?
Thank you both for your questions, and thank you, Jane, for everything she does. I'm a mile shyer, as I mentioned. I am often seen, or have been often seen, at the Monday night Stretford group. Not going very fast, it has to be said. Health prevention is absolutely key to what we want to do in the Green Party. Like in policing, I talked about violence reduction and prevention. Prevention is key in health. In Trafford, where I'm a councillor, we have an 8.5-year difference in life expectancy, and Trafford is only 10 miles across. It is absolutely shocking and appalling that in 2026 we are in this situation. I want to bring in a healthy homes programme. Too many people are living in dangerous, unhealthy homes with mould, with damp, with fire risks. 1 in 12 renters are living in a home with a Category 1 risk, the highest level of risk that needs urgent action. So I want to work with the 10 local authorities to bring in an agreed set of licensing rules for all landlords, not just HMOs. And crucially, I will be funding an enforcement service who will be able to go in and make sure that this is happening. By giving people, of course, affordable homes, as I talked about earlier, we will help there as well. By focusing on active transport and giving young people, everyone under 22, free buses, we will be helping people get out and about more and cleaning our air. You know, in the last few weeks, we have seen the dirtiest air that we have seen for a very long time. 13 times the World Health Organization limits, I believe we were at the other day, from these wildfires. Everyone deserves clean air, and it's just not been a priority for people. I will also be using that strong voice to government to call for a right to breathe clean air, which Green MPs have been fighting for. And finally, on prevention, the climate crisis is going to bring so much more ill health. We're going to have so much more people dealing with extreme weather. We have seen that in heat and in cold. So by tackling that at the heart of everything we do.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to wrap you up there.
Thank you for that. Okay. Firstly, on funding, because we need to answer the question, right? We can't just go off on whatever we want. On funding, social value is a really important aspect of that. I can see that social value can be successful in some communities. I don't think we're doing anywhere near enough to standardise social value and the contributions that it can actually reach to community groups across Greater Manchester. As I said, I think Manchester sets a good example. I know that Trafford, for example, is way behind on social value. It needs to do better. So actually, I think Greater Manchester needs to create a standard for social value so that you know what you can access from the organisations and businesses that are making a lot of money from the city region, and that needs to trickle down to community groups like that are represented here. We need to change how we look at procurement rules. There's a lot of barriers to how services and organisations and groups can actually access some local government funding. I think we need to look at procurement changes. Value for money is lovely, but ultimately it's also not based in reality often, and I think we need to change those procurement rules as well to address those barriers. And then on prevention, it's a really difficult question to answer because prevention is actually a wraparound service, isn't it? It is housing, it's affordability, it's making sure that people have good jobs to go into so that actually those public health issues that come naturally with poverty are actually addressed as that wraparound service. And I only have 35 seconds left and I'd love to talk to you more about it, but actually that's where we need to make sure that growth in Greater Manchester needs to work for everyone, because if it doesn't, we will continue to have the inequality that we have in health and the inequality that we have in education. And then finally, on capacity for organisations that are represented here, we need to use the skills budget and the powers that Greater Manchester has to ensure that the capacity building that you need can be provided to you by GMCA. That's what I would prioritise.
So I don't think we could have an event like this and not talk about long-term infrastructure funding, but also how we get money to the grassroots. So I think two very, very important questions. I think often for many of our newer groups, it's too hard to get funding in the first place, and you feel that it's a little bit of a closed shop. And I think how we change the demands on being evidenced the last 3 years of what you've done, I think will change how you can access new funding. So I think there's a commitment to opening the doors to let new groups start off with smaller amounts of funding to prove that they're able to crack on and deliver. I think I would commit myself to some of the things that we've already begun to do. So the Accord is really important, but also the Fair Funding Protocol is really important, and making sure that that's embedded right across Greater Manchester. I know we've got an infrastructure grant programme, but I know that sometimes across Greater Manchester we still ask you to compete against each other too much. And actually, the more you have to compete against each other, the less the less the sector can solve some of the problems more broadly. I think that Live Well and some of the implementation money that will flow from that makes a difference. I think we have to commit to moving even beyond 3-year funding contracts and get much further than that. I think the burden of the evidence, I think there's a debate to be had around, are we commissioning you, or actually are you just delivering something that is of social benefit to our city region and doing it cheaper than the NHS? And I've evidence that this can be done through either what I've done with Making Manchester Fairer, which was building on the social determinants of ill health work that we did with Sir Michael Marmot, but actually put money into community groups to tackle structural inequalities around health, wealth and structural racism. And that starts to make a change that we couldn't have dreamed of as a public sector organisation. And in the last 10 seconds, I could tell you loads around what I did as the executive member for health and care wellbeing about pulling money out of the NHS and stopping treating people when they're too poor and too sick and doing it earlier.
Have to stop
There
you
we
there.
go.
Thank you. We move to our final question of this hustings, and have we got Aidan in the room? Been beaten to it, Cassandra.
Hi everybody, so my name is Aidan Jamal, I'm Chief Exec of a charity called BHA for Equality. So we were founded in Moss Side in South Manchester, but over the last 30 years we've grown to cover the whole of GM and indeed beyond. Our work's in public health and particularly in health inequalities and how that affects communities of colour. So I have a question on health inequalities with those groups. So Greater Manchester has led some really important innovations in terms of how it's been able to engage the VCFSE to tackle health inequalities, but the wider landscape means that we continue to see a worsening of outcomes for those communities, particularly in things like cardiovascular disease, cancer and HIV. So I'm interested in hearing about how you'll build on the successful work of the sector so far, but also what else you can do to begin to close those gaps that are widening.
Who's going first?
I mean, I could talk to you for days about health inequalities, so such an important question. I think you look right across the city region, and there are just some things that we've not shifted that should shame us that we've not shifted. You know, if I think about the differential in maternity services, right? How long have we been talking about the disproportionate impact on black women that maternity services have? There are some things that we really need to double down on our work with the NHS. I believe in a term when it comes to public health around proportionate universalism, which means for the untrained public health eye that sometimes you have to take a different approach for different people to eradicate that inequality. And that's the kind of lens that I would bring to this. Be it maternity services, like I mentioned, be it mental health services, be it the differential in cancer treatment, but also thinking about those wider social determinants that we talked about before. So good quality housing, you know, and I've talked about what I'll do in housing, both around sticking to the plan of building 50,000 genuine affordable and council homes, regulating the rental sector around poor landlords, but also shifting money into prevention, because actually communities have the solutions. And we showed when we did it with cancer and smoking, and we did it just before the pandemic, where we were able to make really big differences in the health inequalities and life expectancy gap, because we started to allow communities to set their priorities of where we should go. That's the kind of leadership that I would bring. And I think for me, the NHS has, sadly, in its reorganisation, moved too far away from what we were trying to create in Greater Manchester around funding prevention. So I would hold the NHS to account to make sure we worked with community groups to be able to eradicate those inequalities once and for all.
thank you, Aidan, for raising this. And like others, I've been shocked by the statistics we see around things like maternal health and the differences we see that different women in our society face. I think, like with so much else, this is intersectional, and that we see the areas where we have the most poverty are also the areas where we have the most people from marginalised groups, from racialised groups that are not getting the support they need. I think key to making this work is about co-design and working with people. So by and for organisations, people like yourselves. This isn't about the NHS coming in and fixing it for people. It's about genuinely listening, finding ways that we can hear the voices and experiences of people involved, and get those changes into the NHS. This isn't about someone else coming and fixing it. It's about someone else providing the funding, providing the leadership, but letting those voices be heard. And it's also about data as well, because we know that where we focus our attention is where we see changes. So I think by really prioritising, looking at these desperate inequalities that we have, we will be able to see more of the problem and to see more of the solutions. And we know as well that, again, issues like poverty and safe housing are going to disproportionately affect these people, the people who are affected by health inequalities. Also things like transport. You know, we find that once you get out of the city centre, our transport system is very, 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 very poor. We know that the outer boroughs are not getting the service that they need, whereas the city centre has got a really good service. And a third of people in our city region don't have a car. So people are really struggling to get around to get to those medical services. But again, with my Empty Streets programme and our Community Development Fund, where we're giving 10 million people pounds for people to get those community services in the areas that we need them, it will be a way of bringing back services into our communities.
First off, I think that the elephant in the room when we ever talk about this is actually that treatment pathways are broken for people from marginalised backgrounds as well, actually. There is already a bias in some of the treatment pathways that exist within the NHS, and I think that's why it's really important, actually, that we improve scrutiny, not just of the NHS here in Greater Manchester, but of lots of other agencies as well. I think we need to accept that actually scrutiny and making sure that those voices are being heard at that level, at the decision-making level, is not working. And I think that one of the things we need to improve as we hope to build a Greater Manchester that works for every area of our society is that we need to make sure that it's those marginalised voices that are in the room when those people are being scrutinised and those policies are being scrutinised. And I think treatment pathways are a really important one. Yes to co-designing, but also it needs to be community-led and community-delivered. We all know that we get better outcomes of delivery of service when they come from a place where those people trust that as a service provider. We learned that through the pandemic. I think we can learn to deliver that service better. But also, it is a wraparound, right? So we've spoken a lot about housing, we've spoken a lot about affordability. It is obviously a socio-economic factor as well, so we have to make sure that when we address public health and prevention as a whole, that we understand that it is also socio-economic as an aspect of minorities in this city that are impacted. I think we need to look at socio-economic as a key determiner in our data, and focus on that actually as well, and make sure that we find those places where people living in poverty in our city region actually trust as a service provider, because that is an area that I think we really struggle in currently.
Thank you, and thanks again to everybody who submitted or asked a question. Thank you to our candidates for answering those questions. I'd now like to move on to your closing remarks, but before I do, I would just like to ask that if you haven't already covered it already, please can you include in your closing remarks how you intend to actively commit to the Accord and work alongside our sector over the coming years. We will go in first name alphabetical order again. And you have got 3 minutes again. So Bev, I invite you to go first.
So firstly, thank you. I enjoy, and I think it's important that you put us all through our paces, because you need to know what and who you're elected and what track record we have to be able to get stuff done. So thank you all so much tonight for coming along, and thank you for those questions. As I said in the answer to some of my questions, but also in my opening remarks, I hope what you see from me, and I'm a little bit what you see is what you get. I got involved in politics because I want to change things, because the status quo for generations have left the people that I grew up with left behind. They don't feel they've got power and they've got agency. They don't feel that they've got control. And if we talk about why there isn't trust in politics at the moment, it's because people haven't seen that change. They've not felt it in their pocket, but they feel like people are doing it to them, or they make promises that are never delivered. And it's why I'll be really, really straight with you. I won't make promises that I can't deliver, and sometimes that might not sound as ambitious as you would like it to be, but in communities like mine, I've been let down too many times, and promises you don't deliver are more dangerous than not making a promise at all. So I want to be really, really clear. As Mayor, I'm not going to come to you and ask you to fix the problems that I've identified. The very principle of what we do with the Accord is how we work together to solve the biggest social challenges of a generation and to win. Because it doesn't matter which bit of Greater Manchester I go to. It doesn't matter which community I speak to. It doesn't matter if I'm talking to our older people's board or I'm talking to our disability collaborative. People across this city region are struggling and they need somebody that's able to deliver. So I've got a full manifesto. No doubt you can read it in your own time. But the reality is we face a generational moment of making a difference in our communities. And I will never accept the status quo. I want to make sure that you've got better funding, that you feel that you've got a voice, that we say it and we mean it when we talk about Live Well. Because Live Well isn't just about doing services differently. It's creating a greater Manchester where everyone has a good life, where they have a good home, in a neighbourhood that they feel safe, with enough money in their pocket, and that they feel that their future looks better. And that's what we're missing in the country at the moment. There's only so many times you can say to your mum in a Christmas card, I hope life gets better next year, knowing that it never will. I want to lead a Greater Manchester where every community feels that their path to a better future, where no one is left behind, is achievable. And every single day, if I'm your mayor, I will fight to make a better Greater Manchester alongside you a reality.
Thank you. Over to you, Geraldine. Just a reminder, we're not taking questions from the floor. I understand we've got someone with their hand up. I don't know if a member of the team would like to assist in case there's a welfare question, but in terms of a fair... Right, okay, yeah, we're not taking questions from the floor to ensure a fair and thorough process. So I'd like to invite Geraldine up to the podium.
Thank you so much for all the questions tonight, and I'll be happy to chat with anyone with extra questions afterwards, of course. Tonight we've talked about funding, partnership, inequality and public services. I hope I've covered some of how I would help to work with the Accord through co-design, through citizens' assemblies, through community development fund, and giving our communities more control over assets. But underneath all of this is one really simple question, which is, what sort of Greater Manchester do we want to live in? Is it the status quo, a place where people compete for shrinking resources and where too much is siphoned off by big business? Or is it a place where everyone knows that they matter and where no one is left behind? You know, I have spent this campaign meeting people who aren't asking for miracles. You know, they're asking for buses that turn up, that take them to jobs that pay enough to live on, for homes that they can afford and safe streets, for a clean environment and somewhere where their children can build a future. People want decisions that are made with them, not for them. And the voluntary, community, faith and social enterprise sector understands something that I think politicians often forget. And that is that the strongest communities aren't built through transactions. They are built through trust. And trust takes time. It takes listening. It takes turning up when the cameras aren't there. And that is the kind of mayor that I want to be. A mayor who sees communities not as problems to manage, but as partners to empower. who believes that every child deserves clean air, that every older person deserves dignity, that every neighbourhood deserves investment, and that every voice deserves to be heard. If that's the Greater Manchester that you want, then you can vote Green to take Greater Manchester back from big money. And I'll remind you as well that in this election, you have 2 votes. So you can use your number 1 vote to vote with your head and your heart for the mayor that you really want. And you still have your number 2 vote for your backup choice. Let's make this happen together.
Thank you. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you. So we've spoke a lot tonight, haven't we, about the Accord and the importance of continuing the work that you've already started. But actually, just in the questions and the answers, we've actually spoken about those Accord values, haven't we? We've spoken about honesty and the importance it is to continue the engagement with multiple groups across our society to make sure that people feel represented, not just here, but also in the corridors of power as well. And I think that where we see Westminster fail us and where we see that trust break down, then it is up to us as leaders in our communities to deliver on that trust and that honesty. We've heard about ambition, and I think we all hear that we need to be more ambitious in delivering for the people across Greater Manchester. And I hope that we've just scratched the surface in how I want to make sure that our policies are much more bold, much more ambitious than they have been previously. And we've also spoken about accountability as well. It is absolutely vital that where we see accountability of this office that we are all standing to be elected to has failed, and it has failed, that we put the people in the room to hold this position to account. And I know that there are people in this room that are best placed to do that, and that's why we need to work together closely. And in doing so, we talk about trust. Because if we do all of those things, then actually we might start to rebuild the trust that is unfortunately broken between the people and the people who seek their votes at election time. Because every political party of all colours, regardless of that rosette, has let people down in the past. And it's up to people like me and people like us to rebuild that trust in our communities. So the Accord goes a long way and sets an example for what you want from Greater Manchester. But I actually think the Accord also sets an example for local politicians and national politicians, not just across the country, but definitely here in Greater Manchester. And so this election is really clear. I want you to vote for a mayor that you can trust will care about the issues that matter to people, whether it's making sure that our transport network works, whether it's delivering the new generation of jobs, whether it's dealing with the cost of living crisis. And to focus, finally, on that cost of living crisis, I want to be really clear about what's coming back on the doorstep. We have to make Greater Manchester affordable again for the people who live here and for the next generation of people who are drawn here, whether they wanted to or not, who seek sanctuary here. And we can do that in 3 major ways. Addressing the cost of childcare, making sure that people have an affordable house to live in, and hopefully a pathway to ownership if that's what they want to do. And finally, by fixing our broken social care sector, because that is what is creating generational poverty here in Greater Manchester. I hope that what you've heard tonight inspires you to give me your first preference, and it would be an honour to get your support. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm amazed that you're still wooing, because it is bleeding hot in here, isn't it? Thank you so much to the candidates. Firstly, for turning up and coming tonight, and for fully engaging with the questions from our sector. We look forward to working with whoever is elected to help to continue to make sure all people and all places across our region thrive. There should be a QR code on the screen, team, but there isn't. So if you have got feedback, will it be on the Voluntary Sector Northwest website? Yeah, so get in touch, visit the website, and you can give the team your feedback from tonight's event. Reminder, when is election day? There we go, thank you. But the deadline for proxy vote or for voter authorisation certificates, if you haven't got a photo ID that allows you to vote, is the 22nd of July. So thank you to you for putting through with this heat, for fully engaging with the candidates, for all of the questions that got submitted ahead of today. I couldn't be more proud of our sector. Thank you so much. And finally, another thank you to the leadership group for hosting this, and Voluntary Sector Northwest for pulling this out of the bag within a couple of weeks. And that concludes the hustings. Thanks again, everybody. Thank you.